Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Thanks for tuning in for another episode. Today you actually are joining me while I'm out practicing for a bass open. I get kind of bored by myself, so I figured I'd talk to you guys. And right now I'm throwing the Scamper rig, the core tackle Scamper rig with a methylate fluke, super salty. You can see it's definitely getting chewed up today. Been performing really well, but I have gotten a lot of questions on it recently. I actually did a video not too long ago where I compared the Scamper rig to the hover rig because I had some questions on that, and I got several more questions then after I did that video. So I figured I'd kind of walk you through a few things. Some people wanted to see me using it in action. I get that comment all the time, guys. I try to get on the water as much as possible and make videos for you, showing you the techniques and the baits and, you know, show you how I like to use them. Hopefully catch a few fish with them. Sometimes I don't even talk positively. You know, I give you my concerns about certain baits, but the reality is I live in Wisconsin and our water is froze over for literally 5 months of the year. I'm in north central Wisconsin. We are still frozen over, and with the weather we're getting right now, we'll probably be frozen over until the middle of April, I would say, if not even a little later. Northern Wisconsin will be later than that. So I try to get on the water and do as many as I can for you, but I figured I would take advantage of my time during practice right now and kind of walk you through some of the things that I'm doing and show you how I'm fishing this and being successful with this. You know, so we are on Lake Norfolk, which is an Ozark style lake. Fishes very much like table rock and beaver, bull shoals. From what I've seen, I've never been here before, but in the day and a half of practice, it definitely is an Ozark style lake. So, you know, there's a couple of different things that I like about this. Now I'm actually kind of going down the bank looking for bedding fish. We are on the verge of having fish come up and spawn. That's something that I like to do during tournaments, and I'm looking for a bait that will help me cover water quickly while I'm going down the bank looking. And a fluke would be a great bait normally to do that with. And I gotta tell you, in this case, one of the keys with the Scamper rig that make this really nice for doing this is the fact that that little bit of weight helps me fish it faster and helps me keep it down. Now, if I come to a target, I can really slow down and I can fish it much more like you would a traditional weightless fluke, you know, where you're just kind of twitching it, letting it dance all over the place. But it's hard, that's hard for me to do if I'm constantly on the trolling motor. Now, I'm not zooming down going super fast, but it's hard just to bop it around and let it sink down and glide like you would a weightless fluke. Now in this case, that little bit of weight will actually help propel the bait to go down. So if I pause it, it sinks just a hair faster and gets me down into the strike zone longer while I'm moving forward. So that's one thing that I really like about it. The other is, you know, the Scamper, we named it because it scampers. And really what I can do is keep it moving while I'm moving forward. So I'm actually fishing it a lot of times just like this, almost like you would be a, I don't know, I'm trying to think of something I'd fish it like that. You know, it's almost like you're dragging a Carolina rig, but doing it really fast. You know, you're just kind of pumping it. Almost like you're you know, a bigger glide bait or something like that. But I'm doing it because I can keep moving. So I'm really finding that this is being very effective with me. And when I pull on it, that bait scampers really good. Now, obviously, because I'm moving the boat forward, one issue I run into is if a fish hits it and comes at me and I'm going forward, you don't feel a lot of the bites. So a lot of the times I'll go to pull like that, and when I do that, that's when I'll realize there's a fish. Now, the biggest thing you can do when that happens is reel down real fast into the fish and try to set the hook. Don't try to you know, feel the bite here and then pull forward. You'll never get the hook set that you want if that happens. So that's one of the things to note if you're fishing it fast. And even if I was sitting still with the boat, it's the same thing. A lot of times those fish will hit it and come at you, so you don't actually feel the bite. so you don't know that you should reel down and then set the hook into them. And obviously, being that this is an exposed hook, you don't have to put much pressure on it. It's a laser sharp Trocar TK180 hook, so it's really a it's a light wire hook, but I mean, you can fish it on bait casting gear if you want to. It's not like you're gonna just destroy it if you throw it on 12 or 15 pound tests, which is actually what I was fishing in the video that I released this bait or this hook doing. In this case, I just have it on spinning gear, so you can fish it on both presentations if you want. But really, one of the keys is to recognize that what you're doing is you're allowing the fluke to be fished in a manner of either traditional weightless fluke, where you're just kind of popping it around and letting it glide, which you can do. I mean, it generates a ton of bites that way. Or if you want to really start working it faster, like the guys like to do on a lot of the herring lakes, where they're really just giving it good sweeps. And when you do that, I don't know if you can see that. When you do that, the way the weight is positioned in the bait, it scampers. I mean, it vibrates. You can feel it in your rod tip. And that's something I've had a lot of questions on too. So if I do that, if I pull it, I don't know if you guys can see it, but I mean, it's vibrating to the point you should be able to feel it in your rod tip. And when you know you've got it rigged right, that's when you feel that. But I have had some questions regarding that as well, where I've had some guys say, hey, I can't get the fluke to vibrate like you do. Well, I gotta tell you, through all of our trial and error, it is important to match the hook up with the bait. You don't want too big of a hook. So this is the 2/0 size. The 2/0, in my opinion, is the one you want to throw in a fluke. If you're throwing a bigger soft jerk bait, like a caffeine shad, that's when the 4/0 works better. But the smaller ones, you definitely want the 2/0 size. The 4/0 in the smaller soft jerk baits and a shorter, more compact one generally doesn't allow the bait to vibrate in the same manner. You can still get it, it's just not as easy. And I think, a 2/0, honestly, in the fluke, in my opinion, is perfect for this. Now, depending how you want to fish it, feel free to put the 4/0 in it. You just may not get the same amount of vibration that you would with, say, the 2/0 hook. But if you're fishing it like a normal fluke, a weightless fluke where you're just kind of bopping it around, at that point you aren't fishing it in the manner where you want the vibration. If you're fishing more of those blueback herring lakes, or you're fishing it and trying to make it scamper, as we say, then you might want to drop down in the hook size just to allow it to maximize that vibration. But that is a good question. I've gotten several questions like that, and I wish I could sit here and say that I have fished every soft jerk bait and come up with a chart that shows what hook. I have not, but we are going to be putting on a website, the hooks the size that we recommend with certain baits, the more popular soft jerk bait sizes. So that's something as well that I have had questions on, and it's something that, will be kind of up to you guys to play around with the soft jerk baits that you like, to see which ones you think perform better. But ultimately, there's no right or wrong way to fish a fluke. That's the crazy part. If you can, that was one of the reasons we wanted to come out with this hook, because we felt like we were now taking several different ways to rig a fluke and created one hook that allows you to do several different things. Whereas in the past, if you wanted to fish, say, a weightless fluke, generally people would go with like an EWG hook. If you wanted to get the bait to scamper, a lot of guys they were taking straight shanks like we've got, and then they were putting weight on it and just having to, play around with it. In this case, you've got something that kind of does a little bit of everything. So, just overall, a great technique, a great presentation. In this case, I'm throwing a methylate one, but if you're fishing dirty water or you're fishing clear water, feel free to mix up the bait. The other thing I want to point out too is how good it does hold up. The locking mechanism that's in the bait is just it's not a big piece of lead, but we really designed it specifically to do a few things to really lock that bait in. I've probably caught a dozen fish on it. You can see how chewed up that is. against my black glove. That should work good. But, you know, the bait is just locked right on place. It doesn't slide down. It's a teardrop weight so that the little bit more of the weight is actually on the belly of the hook to try to keep the weight a little bit more centered. Because one thing you probably will notice too, and this is normal with this presentation, is that the hook will want to roll over. So, you know, when you pull it, the hook point will come up, but a lot of times the point of the hook will roll over. So by putting a little bit of the weight on the belly, or further down on the belly in the teardrop of the weight, that helps provide a little bit more of a keel and keeps the hook point up a little bit longer. But don't think that because the bait rolls over, that's a bad thing. In fact, there's a lot of people out there that actually feel like that's a very good way to trigger bites. You know, that's the whole idea of getting your minnow to rotate, creates some of that change in color and that natural movement. So when the hook rolls over, we actually like that. I don't have a problem with that at all. But I know I've had some questions regarding that, and that's one of those things a lot of times I actually totally forget about because I like it. And there's a lot of people that feel like that's an unnatural movement, but don't think that that's not a bad thing. And the other thing to go along with that too, we do get a lot of questions regarding fishing it with a swivel to prevent some of the line twists. Well, anytime you're fishing a bait that has its own movement like this, whether it's a weightless fluke or a floating worm or the hover rig, you know, the baits do so much movement in the water that they tend to get more line twist. And I know I've talked about on the channel where I don't really mind line twist. I know it's a hassle, but I don't mind it if it's allowing me to work the bait in the manner I want. So I don't fish it with a swivel. But having said that, absolutely you can do that. It will help limit some of your line twist. Don't hesitate at all to do it. I just prefer not to do it because I don't like potentially reeling the swivel up through my guides, and I don't like adding additional knots from my reel to my bait. So if I add a swivel, I've just added an extra knot that I don't generally want if I can prevent it. Now, the other thing I'll add is I don't feel like a swivel necessarily cures the line twist issue. It definitely helps, but you're still going to result in some issues. So you can see, I mean, you can get this bait to just walk the dog. I mean, it fishes just like a normal fluke. That's the nice thing. There's so little weight in it. We've got a 1/16 ounce and a 1/32 ounce where it's not enough to overpower the bait. In fact, what it actually does is it almost gives the bait a little bit more energy to glide a little faster. A normal fluke would just kind of really slowly fall. This will actually almost like start to pick up speed because it's got just a little bit of weight to propel the bait, which is one thing that I do really like about it, and that allows me again to fish it a little bit faster. Just one of those things that I get questions on, and being that we design the bait, I feel like I want to answer every question I get. We get so many questions regarding a lot of our baits because the techniques are a little bit different. They're newer, the presentations are newer, so a lot of anglers aren't really familiar with how to fish it and how to work it. So I like to do some of these videos just to kind of let you know what I'm thinking when I'm doing this and why we did what we did. And if it helps you, then I'm really happy to do that. So hopefully this answers a bunch of those questions. I'm gonna get back to practice here, find a new spot, because this little spot apparently is not holding much. I'm not seeing much along the bank as I'm talking to you. It does look good, like a little rock transition like that looks good. They're just not, the water temp is upper 50s to really low 60s, and you'd think that the fish would be back in a lot of this stuff, but they're just not quite there from what I'm seeing quite yet. I think the water temp really warmed up really fast over the last week, but I think it has more to do with the surface temp than anything. And when the surface temp rises really fast, a lot of times I think you got to get the water temp down a little bit deeper to come up with it. And when the surface temp rises, it takes a little bit longer to convince those fish that are down in 20 foot of water to want to move up to shallower stuff. But a lot of times what that means is they're not too far behind. So come tournament time, they might be up on this stuff. But that does look really good right there. So like when I see something that, you know, there's a nice little hole there. When I see something that I want to work the bait more through, I'll do that. If I'm trying to cover more water, that's when I'll kind of go more into my scamper mode where I'm pulling it, fishing it a lot faster. But this does look really good. I like, you can see how there's like a clayish underbank there, and there's a lot of these scattered rocks that are down deeper into the water. That's where they should be. That's so much a part of being really successful, I feel like, in fishing, is knowing what water to fish slower in, what water not to fish slower in, and knowing, you know, where you're kind of wasting your time. Now, it doesn't mean you shouldn't necessarily be fishing it. It just means you might want to cover more water. I think a lot of the best pros out there are just really efficient, you know, at covering water. They'll fish the highest percentage targets that they can and make very few casts in between that. You know, if you can limit your wasted casts, you're going to be putting your bait where there's a lot more fish living. And if you're around where there's more fish, at that point, you should get more bites. Anyways, I'm going to get back to this. And thanks for watching. Hopefully it answers your questions. Stay tuned. We will have more videos coming out for you tomorrow.